All right, for Up West Sports, welcome back. We got a special guest today. We got Will from Overdue Sports. If you're not already following him, definitely head over because we're going to be talking some draft and college prospects, something that's near and dear to my heart. I know we talk Mariners a lot, but honestly, one of the big things besides Mariners baseball is college baseball. I love watching college baseball. I love getting into the draft. I love dissecting more than just the first round, more than just the top 100. I love going beyond that. Who are some of those sleeper picks that you're going to be able to pick up in the 11th round? Christian Little, shout out for the Mariners. He just had a great 11th round surface. But Will, my man, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on, and excited to talk some college baseball with you.
Yeah, super stoked to be on. Really excited to be here. I mean, any opportunity to talk college baseball, I'm chomping at the bit. So I'm really excited to dive right in. So we can get right into it.
Let's go.
We talked off air just a little bit about this draft and how different it is from what we've seen the past couple of years. I think we're going to look back, at the 2023 draft, the 2022 draft, the 2024 class. You have Skeens, Lauder, Cruz, all these guys. And this year we just don't have that dominant person that's guaranteed 1-1. And in the last 2 years, it felt like we could almost map out the top 10 easily. And those picks were so far and out better than what we see at 30, 40. This year is a little bit different. We don't really have that. And there's certainly question marks about who's going to go where. For me, in the top 15, it feels like a complete, throwing darts in the dark kind of deal right now when I'm trying to figure out. But my biggest riser to this point in the season, and he is dealing with a little bit of injury right now, so I'll be curious on how he bounces back, but it's Brendan Summerhill from Arizona. He's taken a huge step up, specifically in the power department. He's leading the country in triples with 6. He's only got 2 home runs to his name, but he's really tooled up. He's got good speed, plays great defense. I really like what he offers at the plate, especially with the jumps he's made. And I think under the hood, he's had some of the biggest improvements that we've seen across college baseball. So I see some mocks having him at 15-ish. I think he's going to make a jump and be in that top 8 conversation. And we were talking about how the Mariners have the 3rd pick. And if Jamie Arnold isn't there, what do you go with? And right now he is one of my favorite college bats. And based on some of the strikeout issues that have happened with the Mariners over the last couple of years, he's a guy with only 13 strikeouts in 93 at bats right now, and almost, 1-to-1 walk ratio. So that could be a really good option for them. But he's been so much fun to watch this year. That Arizona team has been a darling of mine since preseason. And I know they struggled early, but all against top 10 teams. The resume is there. And if he keeps on the same trajectory, I think we're going to have a completely different conversation with him as we jump onto draft day.
Dude, Brendan Summerhill has definitely shot up in my eyes as well. I know he was projected in the first round preseason. I had him on my list of just, hey, you need to watch this kid, see how he kind of, transfers into his junior year and just see kind of where he takes off this year. And man, he has really wowed. I'm excited for where that kid goes as well. Just curious. It's always tough finding a good player comp, but do you happen to have a player comp in mind for Brendan Summerhill? Don't feel pressured if you don't have one. There's no judgment whatsoever. It's very difficult to always find player comps, but I was just curious if you had maybe a player comp to him.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually almost entirely avoid player comps. I feel like I'm never I feel like every time I watch a prospect, there's very few times where I'm like, this is a really good
There's
parallel
Randy Johnson.
between these two players, right? and like I can draw parallels to in their game, like, pitchers with arm slots. It reminds me of this guy, but I don't really have that for hitters specifically. So I don't really have anybody that comes to mind, but he's one of those guys that I think can be a really big difference maker for a team.
Yes, and I agree. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. Some guys love going down the player comp track. I was always just curious because myself, I find bits and pieces like, oh, that kind of reminds me of this guy. That kind of reminds me of that guy. But a full-on player comp, you're just setting yourself up for failure when they don't hit that mark. But no, I was just curious on what your take on was that. And I know we talked a little bit off air about, so one of the risers for me in this draft and who I would actually consider for the Mariners at number 3. Any hitter right now at number 3 is probably going to be a stretch, as we've talked about. But Ethan Petry has resurfaced from his freshman year as just dominating. He's got more walks than strikeouts currently. I don't know if they played a midweek game on a Monday, and maybe I missed a game with some stats. But as I was checking this morning, Ethan Petry has really rose. Batted 360 with 11 bombs in the Cape. That is impressive all on its own. Even if he went out and went over 200 with 200 strikeouts, 360 with 11 bombs with a wood bat playing against the top competition, that's noteworthy. And he was 2 years ago as a freshman, projected. They're like, all right, like you got to watch this kid maybe in 2 years, kind of pull off what Drew Burris had pulled off last year at Georgia Tech. Got to be a guy that you want to watch when it's just junior year. And we've just lost him. A lot of people aren't talking about him. Reminds me a little bit of what Tommy Tanks was doing his freshman year at NC State. Went off, had all these bombs. Everybody's like, oh man, 2 years from now, this guy's gonna be a first rounder. And then 2 years later, he's still a great player. By no standard am I saying he's a bad player, but just got the less hype around the name. Ethan Petry has kept the hype. In fact, he actually got better. For being a power bat, there's always concerns with strikeouts. There's always going to be, concerns with strikeouts. And as Will mentioned earlier, off camera and everything, his ability to handle the elevated fastball, the one that comes like 95 plus. We saw him hit the home run against Liam Doyle. Yeah, I think this kid is primed to have a great second half of the year and really, really bounce out as a premier pick in this upcoming draft. I'm excited to watch the rest of his, junior year, and I don't think he's going to disappoint.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. This is a really interesting case for me because this is a guy that we're talking about who had, even in a really good freshman year, still punched out 60 times. In his sophomore year, he punched out almost 75 times. And this year, you're looking at 19 at the halfway point of the season. And while maybe the home run power, the home run numbers aren't what you would expect, with that uptick in power, the doubles are there. So it tells me that he's still making really good contact. He's driving gaps. He's just not putting the ball out of the yard, which we all know he can do. So I'm not even concerned about the slowdown in home run production, if you will.
Yeah.
But the strikeout numbers are what has impressed me the most. And he's always a guy that has walked a pretty good amount throughout his career. He's got a good eye. And when you're talking about the premier power bats in college baseball, you're always going to be talking about strikeout issues. We saw it with Cags last year. He had some strikeout problems at Florida. And even though last year that number was a little bit clouded because of how many times he got intentionally walked throughout the season. So I know he was really close to that 1-to-1 ratio, and people were really excited because he wasn't striking out a lot. A lot of those walks were intentional walks. So it was kind of tough for me to get through that. And he's shown nothing but great promise in the Royals work so far. So,
oh yeah, I picked him up on my fantasy team. Just I'm like, hey, you never know. Now, granted, it's a keeper fantasy league team. So not a lot of guys in my league are picking up too many guys that are still in AA. But I'm like, no, he's. I just saw that spring training he just had. He's about to bust out.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Petry, it's just so interesting that he's able to cut down on the strikeout numbers because he's really not getting intentional walks. South Carolina isn't necessarily this powerhouse top to bottom this year, and he's still walking more. He's kind of falling into that Nick Kurtz kind of territory where there's a ton of power there and there's not a lot of strikeouts, but there's a lot of walks. And I'm really liking the improvements that I've seen specifically in the approach. And I mean, it's shocking to me that he's still mocked around the 50s. I mean, we're talking mid-second round when you're talking about where he's projected right now. I think that's a ridiculous deal. And I don't know if it's a money thing or what, but he's still a junior. So, I can't imagine that's the case. I'd be shocked if he didn't at least rise into the comp pick range.
Yeah, and it's as a Mariners fan, I'll go ahead and say it again. We do have our I think the 35th overall pick as well for our comp pick. If he happens to fall to 35, you'd be an idiot to not take him. It's like if Christian Moore would have fallen to 35 last year, you're taking him. And that's where everybody or not everybody, where a lot of drafts or mock drafts had kind of had Christian's Moore sent was kind of that low second round. And I was like, I think he's better than that. He's really kind of shown himself, especially in the College World Series. Ethan Petry is a top 10 overall pick, in my opinion. I know there's some really good high school players out there. And as we mentioned, I don't follow high school baseball as well. And it's tougher for me to kind of compare. It is apples and oranges, in my opinion. I think, yeah, you got like Jack Bauer, who's up to 101 from the left side. Yeah, that's noteworthy. It's a little tougher to see because there's no real stats to really follow. Who are they playing? What is he doing? He's got basic skills that you like to follow. College is a little bit more cut and dry. You can kind of see, okay, they're playing in the SEC. Every weekend it's a dogfight. And they're playing against top competition. They're facing nothing but 93, 95, and then above that. So it's a little bit more cut and dry. You have stats to kind of fall back on. But yeah, I gotta admit, if number 3 rolls around and Jamie Arnold's not available, Ethan Petry is 100% up there. Yeah, I want to kick it back over to you. Was there another one that we should be looking at here in the first round that's rising for you?
He's a really big riser, and I hate to call him a riser because he's kind of been projected as a first-round pick since he was a freshman, but it's Marek Houston from Wake Forest. Yeah. And it's such an interesting case for me because he's always been glove first. He's been this incredible shortstop, really, really athletic, but he's always been really small, like very undersized. The physical tools have never quite been there. And he's a guy that hit 220 as a freshman starting almost every game. And then his sophomore year, he upped it a little bit, hitting 325, but the power numbers really came in. And I listened and read a fall camp report about him from Coach Walter at Wake Forest, and he was talking about how, Marek is ready to take this big leadership role, and he's much more physical than he is. And if you look at him on a field, and if you've been watching him for a couple of years, it's obvious. And the Wake Forest hitters have always gotten this little bit of advantage because they truly do play in a bandbox. It's easy to put the ball out of that yard. The couch is a really small park, and he's never done it there. And he's at the point where he's almost totaled his freshman and sophomore home run numbers just in the halfway point of the season. He's at 10 right now. He has 12 between the last 2 years. The doubles are way up. The stolen bases are way up. And he's still bringing that defensive prowess that we know him for. And I think he's now solidified himself as a top 15 pick. But it's a guy that beforehand people were talking about in the top 15. And I kind of scratched my head at it. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's really athletic, but there isn't a whole lot to write home about at the plate. And especially when you're taking a shortstop that early, you're looking for some offensive upside. He's got it this year. I'm super excited about him. The walks are up. The strikeouts are down for the most part, but he's always a guy that never really, really struck out that much. I'm not overly concerned with that piece of his game, but the slug is just a huge difference than anything we've ever seen. He's just one of those guys that I think has really proven himself to be in that conversation. And it's weird to call him that because he seems like he's always been in the conversation since stepping on campus, but I've loved what he's shown over the course of this season.
Yeah, and you make a good point there. His defense was always first, that he was known for that. Kind of going on that Brendan Ryan tear, if you're familiar with Brendan Ryan. Again, a Mariners fan, so I'm going to bring up Mariners. Brendan Ryan was, I don't know, a D-WAR of like 15 per year, but his offensive WAR was abysmal. We'd be lucky if he batted his weight. And so, yeah, it was one of those things where you're just like, all right, if this guy could just bat 200 with 2 home runs a year, we would take it, but he can't even do that. Marek Houston has really turned a corner for me as well. I really like Marek. I'd be very surprised if he made it 215. I think he makes it. I think he makes it in the top 10 somewhere. And yeah, it's crazy because growing up in, playing baseball in the 90s and 2000s, your shortstops were just their defensive first guys. They were, if you get any extra tool at the plate, that's a bonus. Now it's, if you don't have a little bit of pop, if you're not projected in that 15 to 20 home run range, they might just say you're more of a second baseman and we're just going to profile you as that and move you over there so we can get a guy in that's going to be a shortstop. And they'd rather take a chance on a guy like O'Neal Cruz or Ellie De La Cruz, and great players, but they profile high for home runs. And so Marek Houston has definitely turned a corner, and I'm excited to see what he does at the couch for the rest of the year, and just what Wake Forest continues to do as well. Yeah, I wanted to throw a curveball in. I know it's early, but I wanted to throw one in because we were talking about it before. So my dark horse, UC Irvine, is a great mid-major, and excited to watch them play the rest of the year. But I got another mid-major that might give them a run for their money, and that's Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is, I think, are they 27-5 right now? They're doing really good things, and they haven't played a ton of top tier competition, understandably, but they did just take Vanderbilt in the extra innings. They've got some really cool stuff, but also beyond that, I think everybody in their lineup's batting over 300, including one of my former players. Want to give him a shout out, Drew. Barragan. Drew, if you're listening, got you, buddy. And yeah, the whole team is just incredibly good. And then you look at you look at those stats, you're like, oh, okay, they're in Western Kentucky. They might be in the hills. Maybe they're in elevation. Maybe the ball flies. So all the hitter stats are going to be inflated. Nope. If you look at the pitchers, most of them are like a sub-3 ERA, I believe. They're doing incredibly well on that side of it. But I did want to take a player from that and just give kind of my dark horse, maybe comp round pick, because some of those teams that take a top 5 pick that have a comp round, maybe they're trying to save a little bit of money and they could take a player like this. But my player is Ryan Wideman. I think that's how you pronounce it. It could be Wideman. But Ryan Wideman is absolutely killing it. I think he's batting over 400, projected also to do well in stolen bases. I think he's got 20 plus. He could be a bags bombs guy, which, as he's going to be an infielder to the next level. He's somebody I'm very excited to see how it plays out, especially as they get into regionals and they start playing even better competition. And also wanted to give a shout out. I know I'm taking another one away from you, Will, but this is last year. I'm going to throw this one in. A guy that didn't even get drafted, Kip Fugarus. How does that guy not get drafted? I don't know if you saw his stats last year, but I think close to 30 or maybe 25 bombs, and had had like 2 or 3 against Tennessee. Took him and Mark Schallenberger took Evansville all the way to the super regionals against them. Beat ECU, who's no slouch. Kip Fugarus, want to give you a shout out, man. I don't know if you watch this. I doubt you do, but if you do, I wanted to give you a shout out, man, because you deserve to get drafted and do big things. But yeah, we wanted to kick it back over to you for another prospect that you like.
Yeah, I'm going to touch actually on Ryan Wideman because he has been unbelievably fun to watch. He's actually a JUCO transfer this year, so this is his first taste of Division I baseball. And those guys are always a really interesting case for me. When you jump from a Division I to a smaller mid-major, their Conference USA, I don't really loop that into Sun Belt as terms of competition, but you're right in the fact that Western Kentucky has just been ridiculously good. They did take Vandy into extras in the midweek last week, and they just took 2 of 3 from Dallas Baptist, who in my personal rankings was number 10 last week. That's a team that I think legitimately could make an Omaha run, and Western Kentucky shut that offense down. I mean, their nickname is Dallas Bombers, and they really did work on the mound there. But Wideman, it's funny that you mentioned him because I just wrote an article about him last week, and his stats are just unbelievable. He's in the top 10 right now for hits, batting average, stolen bases, and triples. He's got 25 swipes right now through 29 games. He's just been unbelievable in every facet of the game. And there are some things that are somewhat red flags. The chase rate is really, really high, but the strikeout rate is not. Like, he's striking out less than 18% of the time, but the chase rate is up in the 40s. So even though he's swinging and missing a good chunk of the time, he's not striking out. He's putting the ball in play. He's hitting well over 400, almost 500 right now.
Oh, sorry. I was wanted to also touch on that because Western Kentucky is such an anomaly in some of those factors. Like you said, the chase rate's up, but the strikeouts are fairly decent. They're in a good spot. Well, also on the pitching side of things, there's a handful of guys that have like a really high whip, but the runs are not coming in. They still have like a sub-3 ERA. I think there was a handful of guys, and pardon me for not remembering their names. A handful of guys that had like a 2-some whip, but their ERA is also in the 2s, which is insane. So I did want to point that out, that whatever's going on, whatever they're drinking, whatever's in the water in Western Kentucky, it's working because God's on their side right now. So very fun team to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that, in my opinion, if he gets taken, it's going to be really late. And this is where the transfer portal has been so interesting, because it's one of those things where I don't know if he ends up getting taken at all, to where he just jumps up a level as far as, he might play Power 5 next year and then raise his draft stock and go as a senior, but that always kills a little bit of draft stock as well. So I'm really curious to see how he is perceived in draft circles, especially this, we only have a 29 game sample on him in college baseball in general, because junior college is just a completely different world, but the contact rate is really good. The exit velo is really good. He's got a swing that I believe translates. Like, it's pretty quiet, not a whole lot of swing and miss like built in, and he's a really good defender. So I mean, he's a guy that, if you scoop him up in the 7th round, which I could very see possible. I mean, some of the guys that went last year, for you guys, Charlie Bielenson, the closer out of Duke last year, he went in the 7th round. He was the best closer in the country the last basically 2 years, leads all appearances at Duke for a single season, just absolutely ridiculous stuff, and he falls all the way to the 7th round because he's a senior. So I could see Wideman kind of falling into that category. And he's definitely a guy that I will continue to keep my eye on through the rest of the season and see if he ends up being in the draft conversation or if he's more of a let's transfer to P5 and see what happens kind of deal.
Yeah, and with the whole the transfer portal the way it is nowadays, you got to treat sophomores and juniors that are at mid majors that are really breaking out. Like Ryan Wideman is a very good case as kind of like high school seniors. Is they have leverage to now go and play in the SEC or ACC or just at one of these top Power 5 schools versus going in the draft, which is crazy to me. That you now have that extra leverage. Now these MLB teams are not only fighting high school seniors, they're fighting the mid-major guys, and maybe that's why some of these guys don't go drafted. But Kip Fugueros ran out of eligibility. Again, wanted to hammer that one home. Wanted to toss it over to you, Will. Any other prospects you want to talk about that's either sleepers? I'm all open. We could talk about first rounders. We could talk about sleepers, ones that you've just been kind of following, seeing rise through any sort of draft stock. Want to kick it over to you for that.
Yeah, I'll give you a sleeper here because we've talked a lot about some top 15 guys, but
Yeah.
JB Middleton out of Southern Mississippi has been ridiculously good this year. This is his first year as a starter. He's primarily been out of the bullpen his first 2 years. There's a big velo jump there. He's consistently in the mid 90s right now, whereas he came in as a freshman, limited appearances, 9 ERA kind of thing, took his lumps. He can pitch now. He's pitching to a 2.53 right now through 8 starts. The stuff is there. He's punching out guys like he never has before. He's got 56 strikeouts in 46 innings, both of which have surpassed any total that he's brought in any other year. He's a guy that is probably falling in the 100s if I had to guess in draft circles. He's a junior this year. He's already got some Cape experience, and he actually threw pretty well in limited innings in the Cape. But I've been really, really impressed with what he's done. And this is a Southern Miss team that's really good. I know they just lost a series to Marshall, who's, middle to lower of the pack in the Sun Belt, but he's been fantastic so far. And he was a guy that caught my attention almost immediately in 2023, along with some other starters in that rotation. And those guys have all been at Southern Miss for now 3 years, and now they're in the rotation. So he's a guy that I've been really impressed with from what I've seen so far. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that, falls to the 5th round and someone's going to scoop him up, and it's going to make a world difference. He's just, I really like what he brings.
Yeah, that's actually that's one that I did not have on my list. I'm definitely adding him to my list. I'm excited to watch some Southern Miss baseball because they've always been a really good mid-major, and just a fun one to watch. Kind of like ECU, their crowd gets into it. They're fun to watch. And we were talking a little bit before we kind of get things kicked off here about this draft in general, where it kind of looks. And I compared it a little bit to the NFL draft that's coming up as well. It's very similar in the fact that there's no real clear-cut number one besides you could argue Jamie Arnold. I would say he's your clear-cut number one, but you don't know if the Nationals are going to take him at number one. You don't know if the Angels or the Mariners will take him at 2 or 3. I would imagine he goes to one of those spots. But this is a crazy year, and I'm still going to go ahead and pound the table for being able to trade draft picks. This is I think one of the only sports that doesn't trade draft picks for God knows what reason. But if you could trade draft picks, this would be the year where you want to maybe fall out of the first round and not a knock to any of the first rounders that go this year. But there's so much capital and so much talent in rounds 2 through 5. Like a guy like Jared Spencer, who we all know is lights out for Texas, might even fall to the second round just because him being a senior and just a couple other factors. Like he did get lit up one of those weekends. And so a guy like that maybe falls to the second round. But there's also plenty of other guys like you had mentioned, JB, over at Southern Miss. There's a lot of guys that you're really it's chock full between rounds 2 through 5. As long as your organization has money to spend, there are players in that realm that are going to hit that. And a guy like a Ryan Wideman, if he decides to jump out, and this is the other part of the draft, is if he decides to jump out and maybe be a comp rounder or a second rounder, he'll probably go for a much less than the slot value just because of where he was at Western Kentucky. All the other factors that kind of lead into that, and just where college baseball is nowadays. But yeah, I wanted to point out this is an interesting draft that there's no Paul Skeens, there's no Dylan Cruz, there's no Charlie Condons, there's no Travis Bazanas. There's just a lot of guys fighting for rounds 1 through 5. But I did want to kind of pivot over to another guy I really like. He's more of a sleeper, and you might actually know more of the stats side. The analytics side as far as, velo and stuff. I didn't get to do enough of a deep dive. I just saw his stats and I was very impressed. So maybe you know more about him than I do. Left-handed pitcher from Pittsburgh, Ethan Firoved. I think that's how you say his name. He's a little bit older. He's 23 years old, but he's rocking a 2.84 ERA. 31 2/3 and 42 strikeouts with just 6 walks. Very intriguing. I do need to watch more on him, but just those stats alone, because I happened to see his stats last night because I was looking up another player from Pitt that I was talking about at the beginning of the year, David Bodine. And I found this kid. I was like, holy smokes, this guy is killing it. I think he's Caper 9. Caper 9's up there, 42 divided by 31. And then the 6 walks. So this is another interesting one. Do you happen to have anything on this guy, Ethan Firoved?
Honestly, not really. This is a Pitt team that I don't typically watch all that much. There hasn't really been anything that has excited me within that team over the last couple of years, but the numbers are certainly there. And this was a team a couple of years ago that was really feisty. It actually was probably 2024, and it seemed like they just never got swept. Like, regardless of how bad that offense was or how bad the staff was on any given day, they were not going to get swept. And I mean, I don't have a whole lot on him. He's not a guy that I've really gotten eyes on so far, but those numbers certainly jump out. And, he's got opposing hitters only hitting 200 against him. And I described this year, the ACC is really weird. The ACC is not what I expected to be, especially in the preseason. I was really, really high on some ACC teams, and it's kind of been everybody is the middle of the pack. That's kind of how I described the ACC this year. And
that's so true.
If he's putting up good numbers in the ACC, like, you have to trust that. He's a senior, so that kind of falls into the slot value conversation, and that's probably going to drop him a little bit more. But he's a guy. I mean, I'm gonna have to put him on my list because I also have not really watched him all that much.
Yeah, and I don't have enough video. Apologies for not doing my homework on him, but I had to at least point him out because, I mean, granted, there's definitely some factors that go against him, some not red flags, but just factors that wouldn't put him in the maybe even the top 2 rounds. Him being 23 years old, a couple other things, and obviously if you get him in like the 5th or 6th round, I think that's where you'll start to see some of those older guys that are really killing it. Start to surface, like you had mentioned with Balinson, kind of fall into the 7th. And the Mariners also had another one that were really high on, Hunter Cranton out of Kansas last year. He's hit the ground running, and he had actually a really good spring training, playing up with the big dogs. And then he got a comebacker right to the face, and it knocked him a little unconscious. So he's coming back. We'll see what happens. But I mean, he's another arm that's been up to 100. He just had a little command issues, and it was like, okay, like you're always going to try and take a chance on a guy that throws 100. Even if he doesn't surface, even if he doesn't, make it anywhere. So yeah, I'm curious as to more on Ethan, but definitely a guy just to put on your list. Watch him as he grows, and like you had mentioned, the ACC is kind of middling this year. There's real no champion, and I guess on the flip side of that, I was also expecting Florida to kind of be good this year, and they still have a 20 and some record. It's like 21-13, something like that, but they're 1-11 or 1-12 in the SEC, which is insane that they're still that good. They're still a really good ball club, and they still have a couple prospects that I like, because I think the Mariners need a catcher over the next couple of years. We'll get to him in a minute. I know it's your turn to talk prospects. So who's your next prospect you want to talk about?
Well, to your point on the draft itself, we mentioned it kind of really early on. This is a draft where I would much rather have the 20th pick and a comp pick than be in the top 5. Outside of that number 1 spot, or number 1 or number 2, depending on where Arnold falls. Like, I wouldn't really want to be in that 7, 8, 9 range, because it just feels like you're either reaching or you're going to take a high school guy and wait on him for 5 or 6 years. So in that range, that comp pick range, and you mentioned a catcher, my favorite catcher in the class. He personally, for me, was my original mock draft, had him around the 18 to 20 mark. Caden Bodine out of Coastal Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
More than likely the best hit tool in this college draft. There's not a whole ton of power. He goes gap to gap decently well, but he doesn't strike out. The contact rates are insane. He plays one of the best, if not the best, defensive catcher in this class. Everyone loves the hit tool on Ike Irish, but I know a lot of people don't think he's going to stick at catcher. Luke Stevenson is still kind of up in the air whether or not he's going to stick behind the plate. Bodine is going to stick behind the plate. Throws out runners at a really, really high rate. I love every single one of his tools, and if you can live with not having a catcher that's going to hit 25 home runs, that's your guy. And he's kind of falling into that 30 range, and he's a guy that I've been really excited for all season, and he's kind of just quietly done what he does. He always does it every single year and doesn't get a lot of love for it, but the contact rates are insane. Doesn't really ever strike out. So he's a guy that I think has the best hit tool in this draft. I think I can confidently say that. And he's falling pretty deep, which is interesting for a catcher because catchers are, dime a dozen. So you'd think that he would rise, but he's still falling in that 30-ish range.
I still, I'm really big into hockey, and I notice kind of the same thing that happens with catchers is the same thing that happens with goalies in the draft as well. Is they're a dime a dozen, but also like if you find a good one, maybe they make it to the first round. Like this year, this is how nerdy I get. I love watching all drafts. But Joseph Ravensbergen out of the WHL, he's supposed to be one of the first rounders as a goalie in a couple years at least. And so I see a lot of that similarity with baseball as well, is like your top tier catchers, barring who was that? Mike Zunino, who was a Golden Spikes Award winner. You don't see too many of them go in the top 5. And if you do, you keep them. I did want to ask you, because I see the offensive stats, but I haven't dug into his defensive stats. And we were talking about Dallas Baptist. I'm a big Grant J fan, but I don't know too much about his defensive side. What do you got on his defensive ability? Is he going to stick a catcher, or does he make the shift, or what does that look like?
He's a really interesting case. He's a swing guy for me. And I feel like that with a lot of college catchers, to be honest with you. There's not a whole lot of guys when I watch them, I'm like, yeah, this guy is a legitimate pro catcher, because it's a much different game at that point. I mean, we saw it with Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber caught at Indiana forever, and he was a horrible catcher, and it was like, well, he hits, so, what are we going to do? Jay kind of falls into that conversation as well. I mean, I'm not going to say he's bad behind the dish, but I don't think he's incredible. I think he kind of falls into the Luke Stevenson, Ike Irish thing where it's like he might stick, but, with a hit tool like that, sometimes you like the move and hopefully just
Sorry, I got AI tracking, and this thing just follows me if I give it the wrong hand signal. It happens once an episode. You got your first witness and first taste of it.
Love that. I mean, he's a guy that I could see moving, but I haven't seen him anywhere else, so I don't really know where you move him to. I mean, maybe you move him to a first base. I know that's as cliche as that is, but
right.
A lot of these guys that you take in the draft as catchers, they stick at catcher almost until they're ready to be called up. A really good example is Hunter Fiducia for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Or Fiducia, whatever, Fiducia. He was a catcher all the way through the system. He hits AAA, and they're like, well, we just inked Will Smith for 10 years. Austin Barnes is Clayton Kershaw's personal catcher, so who knows when he's going to be out. Let's move you to outfield and see if we can get you some reps. And so I think that happens more often than not with guys that you think might have a chance to stick, and you kind of see how their athleticism builds. Cole Carrig for the Rockies is another really good example of that. He caught at San Diego State, ridiculous freak athlete, but he played catcher, short, and center at San Diego State. He's playing almost entirely just center and short right now in the Rockies org, so they kind of shifted him out of that because of the athleticism. But it's hard for me to always say, like, if this guy is going to stick. Bodine is rare for me in saying I believe that he is a legitimate pro catcher.
Yeah, and I was actually looking up another catcher because it reminded me of another guy, and I was blanking on his name for a second. Matt Klein out of Louisville. He's another one that has really good offensive stats. Right now, I think he's batting 342, 3 bombs. So not a lot of power, not a lot of the other ones, just 3 doubles. But like this swing, And another guy that I didn't do a deep dive on his defensive ability. Didn't know if you had anything on him or anything like that, but he was another guy that I took note of him and just had him like, okay, maybe he goes in like rounds 5 through 10. If he's very good on the defensive side and he's putting up those kind of numbers, maybe he puts himself into a top 3 round conversation. But yeah, as you mentioned, there's a lot of catchers that don't really stick behind home plate if they're hitting well. And it's really, really tough in today's game to find both, which I don't know if I told you this before, but I am a Mariners fan. And so getting Cal Raleigh is just like, it's even if he bats 220 and he hits 20 plus bombs, that's all you can ask from your catchers in all honesty. But yeah, he was another one that I had to put down and just kind of follow him as the season goes, and just had to make note and see what happens, the rest of the way. And maybe another guy that sticks it at home plate and see what he does at the next level. But yeah, I know we talked back and forth a couple of guys. I think it's actually your turn for another prospect or just somebody that you want to talk about.
I'm going to throw you a curveball question really quick since we're talking about catchers.
Yeah.
With the new found analytics that we've discovered in catching, to where we've basically decided in terms of runs saved that framing becomes more important than blocking, it has become really hard for me to judge catchers in a right way, because pro teams are looking at it in a completely different lens than even college guys right now, because not every college catcher is getting drafted. In fact, most of them are not. So they're probably looking for a more traditional defensive first, where in the pros, it's like, can you frame? Can you hit? If you don't block, so be it. We'll figure something out. How is that like judged your ability to kind of figure out these younger guys that are coming up as catchers? For me, it's been really difficult, especially with conversations with the ABS conversation, because if that gets put in play, I mean, you might as well just rule out the catcher position entirely. It doesn't even matter at that point.
The cop-out answer is definitely the ABS, and that it's most likely coming after the next CBA. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say that the ABS is not on the table right now, and we're looking for true catchers. It's really difficult because every umpire is going to be different. And what do you know about guys getting those framing calls? Because I don't have the box on the TV for every last one of these college games and stuff like that. And there's probably analytics out there that maybe I have access to, maybe I don't have access to, about where the actual pitch was, and being able to, you probably have that. And I've seen your stuff and you've done a phenomenal job on that. I have not done the deep dive on that. So I was just, maybe I can kind of kick the question back to you. Is there like a software or something out there that's tracking exactly where these pitches are and the efficiency of these umpires?
Not on the umpires, and I know you watch the college game a lot. The umpires,
they're terrible,
not good,
and they'll always be bad.
and it's even a huge step down when we're talking about a team like when we're talking about Caden Bodine at Coastal Carolina. That's in a completely different conversation than when we talk about Ike Irish, who's at Auburn, because the SEC umpires are in a league of their own compared to Sunbelt umpires. Like we're not even in the same conversation, and it's almost like when we're talking about high school compared to college, like. There's
apples
a lot
and oranges,
of strikes that aren't even close. So for me, and TrackMan does to some extent cover zones as far as where pitches are, but I wouldn't say that it is an accurate source of saying, okay, this catcher is doing a really good job on this part of the plate. I don't think that information exists specifically in the college game, and not every school has access to TrackMan. So that data is few and far between.
It is tough to kind of decide that. What I can see are mechanics in catching, right? Like you can see where guys are kind of getting through and getting up and just kind of getting everything back to the zone, however they may do it. I can see the mechanics of it, and that's kind of all I have to go off of. But yeah, framing is very difficult to judge. And I know these analytics teams for all these different organizations probably have their own way of doing it, and whatever they're doing, it's working, because you're seeing it rise to the top. They're getting the best ones in, and you're seeing the cream rise to the top. Or maybe they don't know what they're doing, and they're just buckshot approaching it and just going with every catcher and just be like, okay, who's the best as we get into minor league baseball? It could be both. It could be both of those. Two truths can happen. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting take, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't know. I don't know,
That's
but
how I feel too.
yeah, I can give my best guess at it. And I'll go back to the cop-out answer that we did, the road that we didn't travel down, which is the ABS. And how does that now, I guess, you look at guys like Luke Stevenson, Ike Irish, Grant J, and now do you kind of care less, or do you now just look at two things, and that's your stolen base rate and your offensive stats, and nothing else matters? I think that if you go ABS, I think that's how it'll finally move to, in my opinion. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts if we do ABS? How does that change a draft for these college catchers?
Well, first off, I'm going to say I'm completely against ABS, and I think it would ruin a lot of what I love about baseball, and that's the human error. And as much as you want to complain about umpires, the pro umpires are still right 96% of the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, it would ruin it, and it would take out the art of catching, because
Yes.
then and ABS won't exist at every level, but at a certain point, it's like, why are we even teaching the art of catching? Because it doesn't matter if you're that good, right? They're going to find a spot for you. And at that point, you're probably it's going to become a glorified DH. Okay, you can catch the ball. And if ABS does come back, that's when maybe you introduce a Kyle Schwarber and put a good defensive outfielder out there. That could be a legitimate thing.
We're working to the point where it's going to be like adult league softball, and the catcher just stands off to the side, lets it hit the backstop, and just tries to gun him. That's what we're working towards here. Yeah, they're working towards no more umpires. I think, yeah, at the very least, you run it a little bit like they did, or I guess like how they're doing, AAA baseball right now, where you can only challenge, and that's what the only time ABS can come.
Which I don't mind that.
Which
I do like
okay.
that.
Yes, I am for that, because there are crucial times where, thank God, Angel Hernandez isn't an umpire anymore. But there are and that it's so funny that I could say that to just about anybody that cares about baseball, and we all hate him. We're all in the same boat. We all dislike this person. And I don't know what your thoughts are on Zach Hampel, but I think we're all kind of in the same boat on him.
Same boat.
Yes, I think we're all in the same boat about these guys. And what's crazy, and I don't want to shell on him too hard because he's retired. But I've heard he's just like the nicest guy outside of baseball. I've heard you take him out, you meet him in a bar, you meet him at, down the street. I heard he's like one of the nicest guys. It's just one of those things where you wish if these umpires had more humility and you were able to like interview them after games, like, hey, that last call, definitely missed it. What's your thoughts on it? And let them explain themselves, like, oh yeah, you know what? I missed it. And that's part of being an umpire is we're 96% correct sometimes. If they were to be able to do that, I think more fans would enjoy the game, A, more, and B, like, okay, they're humans and they're showing humility. We're okay with that. But yeah, it was going off on a tangent on that one. Yeah, ABS. If they ever go full ABS, I don't know. It'll turn into NBA for me. No offense to NBA. No offense to NBA. But once my Sonics left, it was tough for me to kind of watch the NBA and everything. And I know there's some really good basketball players out there, but yeah, didn't want to slander them too hard. But we kind of talked about catchers. Is there any more arms maybe that are kind of floating under the radar that maybe they're in the bullpen that you kind of like or kind of sticking out from that end?
Yeah, one arm that I really, really like and I've always liked is Zach Root. He's now at Arkansas. He's an East Carolina transfer.
Yeah.
He was the left-hand man to Trey Savage last year. I mean, what Matt Hobbs and that Arkansas staff has been able to do with him has been nothing short of incredible. I mean, he was a guy that was 92 to 94 last year, really good breaker. He's got a really funky delivery, kept guys off balance. He's up to 98 right now. He's pitching to a 3.48. He's found himself in the Friday role for Arkansas, whereas when he was transferring in, it was like, okay, Gabe Gackel's probably going to get the Friday night spot. We might throw him on Sundays. He's been a dominant Friday night starter in the SEC, which is, in my opinion, the biggest test of an arm. If you're dominating on Friday nights in the SEC, you're a dude. And he's truly proven that. He's got 60 strikeouts in 44 innings, only 14 walks on top of that. He hasn't gotten hit real hard. He's only allowed 2 home runs so far. I love what he's doing. And there was no better place for him than to team up with Matt Hobbs, because he's one of the best pitching coaches, if not the best pitching coach in all of college baseball. So to see that development was really no surprise, but I'm still seeing him mocked around the 50 mark. I mean, if you're getting him in a comp pick,
insane.
That's a slam dunk.
Yeah. And like we mentioned, there's just so much good talent that, yeah, you're going to find some of these really, really good players. Like, oh, he's still available and it's the 67th pick. You're going to have a couple of those moments this year. And I'm glad you brought him out. I had him on my list. I haven't been watching him as much because Arkansas is just so flooded with this year's hitters and next year's hitters. Between this year and next year, there's going to be so many draft picks out of Arkansas, or if they move on to other schools. But if you take this roster this year between 2025 2026, Arkansas is going to be absolutely loaded with draft picks. One that I wanted to single out. I saw him throw in like the first weekend, and I was like, I'm going to watch this guy for the rest of my life. Lucas Mahlstedt out of Clemson. Absolutely nasty. And he's got just a funky arm angle, just a big dude. He's 6'3", 175, just kind of a taller beanpole. But here's where he's at right now. 26 2/3. He's only given up 18 hits, just 5 walks and 38 strikeouts. And his ERA is almost at 1.0. It's at 1.01. It is almost at a 1. This is a guy with his age at 22. With his age at 22, he probably falls in the second or third round, and he's a steal. I think he's an absolute steal wherever he goes in the draft. But I just don't think for a 22-year-old relief pitcher that's not throwing like 100, they probably don't make it in the first round. That's just, as history has shown us, usually your relief pitchers are going to be 98 plus. And he's lower. I think he's 92, 94, maybe even just slightly lower than that on occasions. But he is going to be very good wherever he goes. He's one that I had to call out. He's one that I saw throw. I think he's a transfer from Wofford is where he came from. And yeah, just seeing him this whole year, he has just been nails. Did you have anything on this kid?
Yeah, he is one of my favorite relievers. I have such a soft spot for sidearmers, and the fact that he's running up in the 90s. He's leading the country in saves. He picked up 2 over the weekend against Cal. I mean, absolute nails is the best way to describe him. So much fun to watch, and he throws that true frisbee slider. Guys don't hit him hard when they do hit him, if at all. He's got a ton of strikeouts. I mean, there aren't a ton of premier closers year over year in college baseball, and when there are, they stand out. Bielenson was my example last year. He was a clear-cut, this is probably the best closer in college baseball this year. Mahlstedt falls in that conversation, and he is that. Do I think that he is even a second-round guy? Probably not, to be honest. Like, I don't know how a lot of organizations view sidearm guys. There's a couple that I really liked that were in the pros that kind of have not shown what I think they're capable of. Justin Lawrence being the most recent example. He's a guy that I've always liked the stuff. I mean, he's up to 100 from sidearm. He's in Pittsburgh now. The ERA is solid in Pittsburgh, but he struggled in Colorado like any pitcher does. But, I think there's a legitimate case for him in a mid-round pick that I think scouts have to like something there. And for lack of a better example, he's almost like, if you remember David Berg from the UCLA championship team way back when, side armor, but he was like 82, 84, but he's kind of got that in him. I mean, he's coming in twice a weekend and shutting things down. And Clemson is one of those weird teams where you look at Clemson's stats top to bottom and nothing really jumps out at you, but they just win. And I like to call it like Clemson just has this voodoo about them. They have this voodoo about them, and it's not pretty. They kind of win in gross ways, but they just win. And having a closer like that is kind of how you do that.
Yeah. And an interesting fact with, interesting take on the Mariners is apparently they're very big into VAA. Like that's like one of the main things they look for. And that's why they were so high on Brian Wu, because he had a really good VAA and that he was able to command the zone a little bit. a little bit. But I see a lot of his. I don't know his VAA. I don't have that information. But if you look at the pitch, it looks like it's coming in pretty flat. Which the term flat fastball has gotten lost over the years because we've now known if it's a flat fastball, that's very difficult to hit. The flatter you can get it, the better VAA. And his looks like it's pretty flat and it's really tough to hit. It gives me a little bit, if I'm throwing any comps out there, I know there's probably better ones, but the one I can think of off the top of my head, he gives me a little bit of the Paul Sewell vibes because he does have, he doesn't have the same delivery. Like it's not the same, but it is technically the same arm angle. It's from down there. It's that low 90s and he's got a lot of potential. And I think he's going to beat guys with just how nasty his stuff is. Once I get those numbers, I'll definitely be able to like deep dive and be like, okay, like this guy is nasty and here's why. But yeah, and you know, it was your turn to kind of go for another one. So I wanted to kick it back over to you. Is there another, it doesn't need to be a pitcher, but is there another prospect that you're really excited about this year?
I'm actually going to switch the conversation ever so slightly. I'm actually going to give you a guy that I think is falling on draft boards, and it's in that Clemson conversation. It's going to be Cam Cannarella. Yep. He's a junior this year. He's fallen off for me. And the stats, if you compare them year over year, aren't drastically different. He's still hitting 325, which if you told me that, I would say there's absolutely no way. This is a Clemson team that just faced off with Wake Forest 2 weekends ago, and he had one single hit, and it came on Sunday halfway through the game. I mean, he just really hasn't shown up, and there's been some injury issues, specifically last year. It prevented him from stealing bases, which is kind of what he does. You know, we saw his freshman year, he swiped 25. This year, he only has 4, and he's 4 of 5. He's not even really trying to run. Same thing with last year. He didn't try to run because of the injury stuff. Yeah. I don't know if that's still lingering, but there's been so much about him that has not super impressed me for a guy that I've historically really, really liked. The defensive tools are there. He's a freak athlete. He can absolutely fly. The power hasn't been there this year. He's only got 1 home run. The production isn't there. He's only got 23 RBI. He's on pace to end up the lowest in his entire career.
Yeah.
And I know there's still some tools to be excited about there, but to me, and it's an interesting perspective because it actually, this is not factual. It's just my perspective on it. But
you
know, a guy gets into his draft year and he struggles after a really good freshman year, struggles in his sophomore year. And, you know, you have agents and scouts saying, hey, if we put together a really good year, we uptick that power a little bit, you're probably going to go in the top 10. And to me, especially watching him over the first 3 or 4 weeks specifically, like it looked like he was just swinging really big, trying to hit home runs, trying to get the big hit, and it wasn't coming. And I still think that approach has still carried on him, and he's striking out a lot. He's also on pace to strike out the most in his career. Granted, he walks a ton. He's got 33 walks already this year, which is beyond impressive for being at the halfway point. But the strikeouts are an issue. The swing and miss is an issue, and he's just not making quality contact. I mean, he's a guy that was originally probably projected in the top 12, top 15. Like, to me, he's more of a comp pick guy and a good comp pick guy because there are some tools there.
Yeah, his story reminds me a little bit of like Judd Fabian. He does have like, he was supposed to be, you know, going into his junior year, his draft year, he was supposed to be a top 12 overall pick. Kind of fell off the map, and he's starting to surface himself in the minor leagues again. So he's still going to have tools, and that hopefully whatever happens with Cam Cannarella kind of surfaces again. But yeah, you just wonder if maybe the injury is still lingering, if something's kind of taken on. And the injury itself, as somebody who was supposed to be kind of that speed guy, you just wonder if that, like, if that's his game, like you wonder how much that takes off. It's not like a pitcher getting, a new knee or something like that. This is directly affecting the way he plays the game. And so you wonder if it doesn't take a toll on it, but there's no numbers that really scream first rounder. I like Cam Cannarella. If the Mariners end up taking him, I'm still happy that we have him. I'm definitely going to be rooting for him, but it's just one of those guys where a lot of people have him, going in the first round. I don't see first round out of him. And honestly, if he comes back and reproves himself again as a senior, I think it'll be a little bit better case for him, because what was supposed to happen, I think, is happening with Brendan Summerhill. I
Mhm.
think the trajectory, sorry, I can't speak tonight. The trajectory that he was on is what currently Brendan Summerhill is doing, and that's what you should have expected out of Cam Canarella. But yeah, he rose above, and he kind of solidified that. No, I appreciate you kind of changing the gears and talking about maybe some falls. There was another fall, and I know it's a high school guy, but he happens to be from the Washington area, and he was, one of the top one of the top prospects heading into the season. And I was able to catch some video of him playing against Puyallup High School, which has another couple top picks with Mason Pike. But Xavier Nines, he is one that is kind of, and I don't want to talk ill on him because I like the kid. I love his work ethic. I've heard nothing but great things on him. But he's another one that maybe falls to the comp rounds, or maybe even the second round, kind of in there, just ability wise, based off of that first game, and just hopefully seeing how the rest of the year progresses. I'm hoping he changes that. But he's one that I'm kind of seeing as a potential fall from where he was at the beginning of the year. And if that doesn't influence him to go to Oregon State and just resurface as a first rounder in 3 years down the road, because the kid's got so much to like. He's definitely got the raw power. And again, maybe I'm not the best one to to be talking about high school players, because it's apples and oranges. It's tougher to do high school hitters, in my opinion, than it is to do college hitters. But wanted to give, if we're doing anybody regressing or anybody maybe falling in the draft, he would be maybe one. But I wanted to keep it more on a positive note, because I had another guy here. They played, where I went to school at Washington State. They played Michigan State, and Michigan State's got a 6, I believe it's 6'7". Let me see. It's 6'8". Sorry, I lied. He's 6'8", left-handed pitcher. Joseph Dzierwa, or Dzierwa, however you pronounce it. He made the list after the first 2 weekends once they played Washington State. I was like, okay, like the guy's got a lot of good stuff. I don't know where his velo's been sitting since, but I pulled up his stats not too long ago, and I'll pull him up again. He's sitting sub 2 ERA with a 1.89, 47 2/3. He's only given up 32 hits, and he's collected 59 strikeouts with 16 walks. So maybe the walks aren't perfect, but another guy that between rounds 2 and 5, you definitely take a chance on this guy. And this guy is 6'8", left-handed alone should just be eye-popping. But beyond that, he's got some really good stuff. I think he was sitting 91, 93 against Washington State, if I'm not mistaken. He might have, as the Michigan weather grows a little bit better, maybe he's starting to, get in the mid nines now. But he's somebody I definitely want to resurface the video on and just watch as the year progresses. But his numbers should absolutely be pulling scouts to go watch him. Will, do you have anything on this guy?
Oh yeah, he's been so much fun to watch this year. He's by far the premier pitcher in the Big Ten. And he was a guy that last year was actually averaging under 90 miles an hour, despite that 6'8" frame. I know 6'8", 200 is not exactly filled out by any stretch of the word, but he's a guy that has showed a lot of improvement. He's been in mid-season All-American talks, starting to rise up in the Golden Spikes watch list. I mean, he's just he is disgusting. He's been up to 95 this year. So yeah, he's sitting right around that 91, 93 kind of range. He's touched 95. There's more in the tank. I promise you, there's more in the tank there. I mean, the biggest thing that I have seen, his changeup is ridiculous. And right-handed hitters have had zero chance against it. They had no luck against it this year. What I really like about him is if you pull up some film about him and watch him, like he moves really fluidly. Like he doesn't throw like he's 6'8", 200 and doesn't know how to move his body. He moves his body really well. He's got a really, really, I call it like late life fastball. I don't know the advanced numbers on it, but there's a lot of late life. I mean, he blows the doors off of hitters with 93, which doesn't really happen in college baseball, nor does it happen in the pros, but he's doing that. So he's a guy, you get your hands on, you add some more strength, some more weight, get him up to 95, 97, and you're looking at a completely different player in 3 or 4 years when you get him fully developed. I mean, this is a guy that, and he's gone deep into a lot of games this year. Like, he's held up. Not a lot of injury risk there. I mean, there's injury risk with every pitcher at this point in baseball, but as far as the history of his injury risk is not really there. So, he's really, really done well. He's a guy that I think should shoot up draft boards. I think he's probably going to fall in the second round as we stand today. His 2025 campaign is probably going to move him up a little bit. I think the only thing that's going to keep scouts away at this exact moment is where he's sitting currently with Velo, because again, he's a junior this year, only sitting 91, 93. There's more in the tank there, but you're talking about waiting until he's 26, and then it's, kind of anyone's guess. But I absolutely love him. I think second round, I could even see him sneaking into a comp pick for, the right team, a team that develops pitching really well, like the Mariners.
Yeah. Honestly, if he goes to the Rays, we're all done. Because I think the Rays would just make that guy a Shane McClanahan at 6'8". I honestly think, and I saw some mock drafts taking Liam Doyle at 14 to the Rays, and I was like, please don't let the Rays get him, because I know they would make him a Cy Young Award winner for sure. I really like that guy, and just with his extension, I think that's why he's getting on hitters so good at 91 to 93, is because he's able to get down the mound so well, kind of like Logan Gilbert. I know Logan Gilbert's kind of in that upper tier with extension and just getting towards home plate, and just you don't see the ball till late. And some of the other things that I don't know are, maybe he hides the ball really well. You add those two things in, and you're looking at a really, really good arm. You add one more thing in where he's sitting 95 and touching 97. Yeah, you're looking at you're talking about AJ Puck if he's bad. In my opinion, I think if he's bad, he turns into an AJ Puck relief pitcher, which is still really good. And if he's good, he turns into, I don't have a comp off the top of my head as far as starters go, but he turns into a really good number one or number two, in my opinion. There's a lot to like there. Well, wanted to kick it back over to you. We got to the hour mark. Wanted to kick it back over to you. Maybe final thoughts or any more sleepers that you wanted to talk about, or even just teams to watch.
Yeah, I'll give you one more sleeper, and I think he is starting to creep into the conversation of no longer a sleeper, but he's a guy who's increased his draft stock a ton this year, and it's Korbyn Dickerson out of Indiana. He's pretty much just lit the world on fire. He's got 13 home runs, 47 RBIs. That's knocking on the top 5 in the entire country. He's got a 1.1 OPS, and he's a guy that I've actually been able to watch in person the last 2 summers. He's spent his summers in Madison in the Northwoods. I've gotten to watch him a lot in person. Love his tools, love his work ethic. There's a couple interviews out there. He's just a great guy, and I think he's one of those guys that you see the tools and you see the uptick in production from his 2024 season at Louisville, and his improvements summer to summer in the Northwoods. And I think that interview process with a lot of teams, I think there's going to be teams that just fall in love with him, and he falls into that comp round, early second round tier, and he plays good defense too. So he's a guy that I've been super high on over the last couple of weeks and has really shot up a lot of draft boards. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. There is some stolen base capacity there. He hasn't shown it this year, but he swiped 16 in the Northwoods last summer. So there's 15 stolen bags in the tank there. Lots of stuff to be excited about with him.
Oh, I forgot I muted myself. Yes, I did. I've been watching that guy a little bit more lately, and now that you said something about it, I'm definitely going to continue watching that guy and see where he progresses. Yeah, one that not too many people are talking about, and he doesn't have the numbers to really. Well, he doesn't have the ERA. He doesn't have the sexy number that puts him, in like, oh, we got to watch this guy. But one that I really like is Jay Woolfolk out of Virginia. He is very Stroman-esque. I don't think he's super tall. I think he's like 6 foot. Yeah, he's right at 6 foot, 200 pounds. But he's another guy that if you just look at his pitches, I don't have the analytics behind it, but if you look at his pitches, he looks like he has good VAA. He gets really low to the ground and towards home plate very well. But yeah, 4.35 ERA, 39 innings. He's given up 40 hits. So the hits are, not even necessarily what you want to be for a top rounder, but the 50 strikeouts and 15 walks over 39 innings compared to where he was at in prior years. I really like this guy, and I beyond just liking him and seeing the strikeout numbers and just, I mean, I guess it comes down to the strikeout numbers and just what I've physically seen with his fastball. I really like this guy. He's a guy that if you were to get him in like the 4th or 5th round, because I think he's a senior. No, he's a senior. He's a senior.
Yep.
So yeah, he could fall just because of his eligibility to 4th, 5th round, and he could climb. He could surface himself as or he could reemerge himself as a very good a minor league guy that just cruises through the minors if he goes and just kind of figures it out. But he's got a lot to work with to get him to that point. Yeah. Well, just curious, did you get a chance to take a look at him?
Yeah, he's a really interesting case because I think he got thrown into the fire a little bit this year. And early on, the control was a big issue, and that's really cleaned up over the last couple of weeks. But with Virginia, who is a team that, I was thinking was going to be a national champion, they haven't been ranked since week 3, really. They've really struggled all across the board. He got thrown into the Friday role with Evan Blanco being hurt, who's just starting to come back from injury, and Jack O'Connor going down, and he's only got a handful of innings this year. So I think as a guy that wasn't necessarily supposed to be the Friday starter, who ended up being the Friday starter, he's shown some good stuff. And I was really, really high on him coming into the year. I was like, this is going to be the best Sunday guy in the ACC this year. And now he's a Friday guy. And to me, I really like the stuff. Like you said, the hits. When he misses bad, and he gets hurt from it. So it's hard for me to say where a guy like that falls. I mean, he might even be a senior signing. Like, he may go undrafted and get signed out. So I think that's a very, very possible thing. But the stuff is clearly there. So I think there's stuff to be excited about with him. It's just a matter of how he continues to perform. And, like I said, early the control was bad, but he's really cleaned it up over the last couple. And the strikeout numbers are what they've never been in his career. So there's clear, upward trajectory over his career at Virginia. So there's definitely some things to be excited about. I don't know where honestly, I could very well see him being a senior signing post-draft.
Yeah, I put 4th or 5th rounder because I'm assuming that Virginia kind of kicks it into gear and finishes this year out strong, and he's going to be part of the one of the pieces to it. Him and Thomas Valinkis, I think is how you pronounce his name. Those two guys, I'm very big on them. I think Valinkis is freshman, so you won't see him for another 2 years, but. Yeah, both of those guys, the 1-2 punch that they have at Virginia, I'm actually surprised they're not still ranked. And it's just, they haven't really pulled it all together. And then losing to NC State, which if you didn't watch that game, check out Wheels Baseball, because those highlights were impressive to watch. Like, it was a thriller the whole way. But yeah, Jay Woolfolk, he has the stuff that I know the Mariners love getting those guys. Like, Logan Evans was one of those guys that he had really good stuff, but not good numbers from Pittsburgh when he was there. And then they get him, and then he turns into this guy. And then there was a couple other guys that I'm blanking on. No, Brock Moore had kind of good numbers. But anyways, there was just these guys that they did dig deep on the movement of sliders, the vertical lift on the fastball, and some of those other numbers. And you look at him, and he's definitely got stuff to like. Under the right tutelage, I think he could be very good. So in my opinion, I think you're right. I think it's high ceiling, low floor. And it's kind of, it could be anything in there, but you really bank on the fact that he's going to be high ceiling. And that's what the draft's all about, especially if you get him as a senior sign. That's a W for any team that gets him. Because I think there's a lot of stuff that you could work with there if you got the right people to get the job done. Well, Will, thank you so much again for jumping on. We love talking college baseball here. I couldn't be happier that you got to join us and be able to kind of shed some light into what your thoughts were on the upcoming draft and just college baseball in general. Man, thank you so much for jumping on.
Yeah, this is a blast. I'm going to have to come back on when we get a little bit closer to draft day, and, we can actually start mocking some stuff.
Yes. No, you're definitely invited back on. We'll definitely talk more draft. Excited to get that ball rolling. This is, the draft day is that's my Christmas. Opening day is right there. It's I don't know. It's my birthday, and then that's my Christmas. So this is what I love about this is I love seeing the new prospects and just giving my take on it and everything. So, Will, thank you again for jumping on. Definitely going to have you back on. Excited to talk more college baseball. Wanted to give the floor to you for a second. Is there anything that you want the people out there to follow, or do you have any subscriptions that we can kind of throw out there and just give you the platform for a minute?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Overdue Sports. That's where I cover college baseball as in depth as possible. You can also find me over at Backside Ground Balls Media. That's where all of my college baseball podcasts live. Able to talk with those guys, super knowledgeable. They get to travel the country and do facility tours. They were just at Arkansas earlier in the season. They're going to be at handful of other schools on the list coming up soon. So they've got some really cool stuff going. You can hear me talk there every single week about smaller topics and, anything you can imagine, anything that you want for college baseball. So if you're a college baseball fan, come find me over there and you'll see everything else.
Thank you again, Will. And that's going to do it for our show. For Up West Sports, I'm Gavin. Thank you for listening. Just remember, life's too short. Gas up your boys.